cryotherapy-based startup which he sold in 2016, and that venture was featured on Shark Tank twice, once as a demo and once as an actual venture. So yeah, Skyler is looking to make an impact in the educational space, and helping people really become really successful in attaining learning abilities in the more video game sense way. So, Skyler, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, ST. I'm happy to be here and happy to be, talking about GameClass with you.
Yeah, I'm glad you're able to really talk about it because you've had like an interesting transition from going from like the cryotherapy industry to now the video game side of things. So what was that? What was that like?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, does it really make sense, right? From cryotherapy to like freezing people to education, it's kind of a funny transition. But I think, it happens to be being an entrepreneur. I learned a lot in 10 years. So I felt like I could take everything I learned, all the mistakes and all the successes and, build a new company if I could find something that I was really passionate and excited about, which I was. GameClass was something that I thought about for a year before I decided to go ahead and, make it happen. And it's something that I am very passionate about education, and I still play video games. Most of my friends do. So that's kind of how I came up with the idea, was my background and my passion.
Right, makes sense. Well, what was the like? I just need to know what was your reason behind being in the cryotherapy industry in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it's how do you get into something like that? I studied exercise physiology in college, and I had to make a decision. Do I, go to 3 years of graduate school and become a physical therapist? And that was a big commitment because it's a lot of money, and I was going to be probably the rest of my life. And I had always had entrepreneurial ideas that I just really didn't do anything about. Someone came to me, and I remember having lunch, and they said, "Oh, have you heard about cryotherapy?" And I'm like, "Huh? What's that?" Like, oh, I thought you would know about it because you studied exercise physiology. And I looked into it, and there was like no cryotherapy in the US. But in Europe, there was a few places, and then there was athletes that were using it, like Olympic athletes, and then NBA players were using it and swearing by it.
Yeah, I didn't know that there was a huge cryotherapy industry in Europe because we always have that assumption that the U.S. is the pioneer of innovation and new patents and new inventions in here and there. So it's just surprise. It was interesting that you were able to really discover this in Europe and then be able to bring it to the U.S.
Yeah, I agree with you. Usually it's opposite, right? But for whole body cryo, it had more of a scene in Europe and now actually Japan and other countries in the US. And that's funny because now it's way bigger in the US than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, I think every major celebrity and every major like influencer is just utilizing cryotherapy as one method of how to keep themselves fit and active. I think one is like, I believe you do. I just need to understand cryotherapy. What is it? What does it mean?
Cold therapy. And I mean, whole body cryo is just a really advanced form of it. We're using sub-zero temperatures, but we're using, dry air. So when you use dry, you're not wet. So I mean, I think you've been paying attention, like even cold plunges are super popular right now, which is great. Cold showers have been used for a long time, popping the Pacific Ocean or cold water, right? The ocean
Right.
stuff. Cold therapy has been around for a long, long time. I think now we're just kind of more focused on it and like how do we, do this consistently? I think
Like a
cold
more
therapy gives you a chance to do that.
like a more mechanized process in a way, because not everyone will have access to like cold water everywhere you go, right? So you could just literally just install a cryotherapy machine and just like sit there and absorb the coldness or something like that. Because
Well, full body cryo, like the reason I think you're gonna like it more than any other form is because it's dry. So you have to go and experience it. But once you do, you're like, wow, I was never colder in my entire life. But after 2, 3 minutes, you get out and you're completely warm again. So like you do a cold plunge, which I like myself, your muscles go numb. You get out, you can't really go work out or go on a jog, but you do whole body cryo, there's no limitations. You can go lift weights, go run, you name it. So it's actually just, I think, in my opinion, a lot more convenient to use.
right. And I think nowadays a lot of people, a lot of major people like Joe Rogan, there's who does cryotherapy, and now I listened. Are you familiar with David Sinclair by any chance?
Sounds familiar, but yeah,
Like
these people are talking about it.
he's basically he's like one of the anti-aging experts, and he does talk about like the importance of utilizing cryotherapy for your body to be able to fight off a lot of infections and bacteria. It's like it kind of like what I call like activates your energy cells inside your body that just says, okay, we're just ready. Since we put ourselves in like an adverse condition inside a cryotherapy chamber, then it's just gives us the ability to fight off infection much easily, I
There's a
guess.
lot of good science around it. I mean, look, at its basic, most simplest form, it reduces inflammation, which is a good thing. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of science if you really get into whole body cryo and just general cryotherapy.
Yeah.
But it's, I think, a really good thing you can do for your body that should be easy, should be accessible. And that's part of my job was trying to make it, accessible and affordable for people to go and do it at their gym or at, in their local cities.
Makes sense. And so yeah, let's get to before we go into more about your ventures, especially your cryotherapy venture and your GameClass. Let's get to know more about you as a person, Scholar. Like, how did you, end up in these kinds of very interesting spaces?
Well, getting started in entrepreneurship at a young age, it opens you up to a lot of opportunities. And my whole 20s was spent as an entrepreneur. And, I obviously was on Shark Tank. That changed my life. All of a sudden, 8 million people have watched you. People were coming out and taking you out to steak dinner. And, I sold a company at a young age and I partnered with the $1 billion health club. And
Hmm.
I did a lot in my 20s, a lot. And I made a lot of money and I lost a lot of money. So I think I went through a lot of stuff and had a lot of experiences that are very unique for someone at a young age. So now I'm in my
Yeah,
30s. I'm in a completely different spot.
right. And now you're in a way like, what was that experience like being on Shark Tank, being able to meet the sharks or present in front of the sharks?
I think it was great. I think, it was a good learning experience. I think, once you're out there, they're just people. But it's kind of funny, like being out there on the show, you're like watching yourself from above, like you're watching it at home on TV. And when you're out there, there's not the music or any of the music going on, right? But you're kind of like listening to it in
Bump.
your
You,
head.
like, you can't. You just like when you enter in, it's like bump, 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 bump,
Mhm.
bump, 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 bump.
Exactly. So you're like playing that in your own head because they don't actually play that. But I think we had a really good experience. They could have torn us apart because it's a new therapy, but I think they respected that me and my sister were true people and they understood the science behind it and what we were trying to do. So overall, I think our segment went really well.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to understand why because the one thing I always like about Shark Tank is like I like to just listen to Kevin O'Leary, aka Mr. Wonderful's critiques every time. Every time he's on, it's like okay, every sort of critique he gives, it's all about like how can I make money out of it, and then you don't
Yeah.
know. That's the thing about what I always. I always find that very fascinating because people who are on the show they don't know what's the future ROI is going to be for their business for their venture. But it's like Kevin O'Leary's just like, I need to know how I'm going to make the money out of it.
Yeah. I mean, he's not wrong, right? Because you can have a great idea, but you can't make money on it. And likewise, you can have a really dumb idea that makes tons of money. And then if you want to keep doing what you're doing, you got to make money to make a living, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I mean, he's not wrong. Maybe the way he says it is incorrect,
Or,
but
it's,
the way
or
he's
kind of
thinking
what I call
about,
the blunt way of
yeah,
talking.
he's very blunt, right? But yeah, I don't think he's wrong. I mean, is it a hobby or is it a business? It's a good question. I think a lot of people need to ask themselves, including myself, when I'm creating anything.
Yeah, and I also seen that clip on when you were providing a demo for one of these other ventures where I think the guy the entrepreneur's name was Dale Lewis, right? He was
Correct. Fortress. He owns Fortress
for
Clothing Company.
yeah. So you were trying to give like you're trying to like utilize your chamber as a way to basically enhance his products, his weather gear in a way.
It was. And again, it was, they came to me because they knew they had something that was very exciting. But how do you prove that this thing keeps you warm under any condition, right? You can't put a lake on the set. But could you bring a cryo unit on the set? So they reached out to me, which was great because I knew, hey, another opportunity to be in front of millions of people. Not the same as pitching your company, but you're still in front of people. You're still on Shark Tank, can't hurt you. So I jumped all over the opportunity.
You're less nervous about it.
No, it was way more fun. I think this time they treated me like part of the crew. I was back there eating their food, the buffet food. I was, hooking up a crowd unit behind scenes, and they had the producers like getting in the crowd unit during pitches. It was awesome.
Well, where does it filmed at? Out of curiosity, because I don't really have a
Culver
hard.
City, down near Los Angeles,
Got it.
California. Hmm.
Got it. Yeah, there's a lot of studios there, but anyway, so now fast forward past the cryotherapy stage of your life now to like starting this new venture called GameClass. What was the catalyst of you start being able to start this company?
think I always wanted to have a video game startup because I played video games since I was 5. And, all my friends were in our 30s. We all play video games still. I think our kids will play video games. Watching the video game industry grow, I think it's an amazing market to see what it's kind of turned into, what it could be. And then for me, playing some of these games where I noticed that as a group, we would win when we communicated well.
Mhm.
We would
Right.
not win. We didn't communicate well. I'm like, wow, if you could have people watch this, they would learn a lot just by hearing us communicate because there's a huge difference on how successful we are when we have good communication. I'm like, wait a minute, that's an idea.
Hmm.
Record the gameplay, use it in an educational setting. And I went further than that. I said, all right, well, everyone loves Mario Kart. I love
Hmm.
Mario Kart. And then you go over
Oh,
these boxes and you have probability, right? What are the probability you're gonna get a banana or green shells? Can you imagine going back to school and like they were using Mario Kart clips to teach me about probability? I think I would have paid a lot more attention.
yeah, that's why I could. That's kind of how I was able to even learn anything was just through playing video games, watch like just observing things, and then I think because when I was in school, it just didn't make any sense when I was trying to learn these different like these very abstract concepts.
Exactly.
And when you start applying it, let's say either through like reading through studies or playing games or something like that, it just like now starts making sense to me.
You got the concept. That is the concept, right? So, like, same thing. I was in school and I'm like, I'm not interested because why do I need to know this? I got older and realized this stuff was very important. I had to use it during business, but back when I was in school, I didn't understand the importance. So, I'm like, if you could use a video game and relate to like the real world, like whether you're playing a baseball game or a driving game, I think you might engage people a lot more. I think people will be a lot more into it. So, I'm excited about the possibilities because I think what could happen is it could end up being one of the greatest teaching tools ever, if not the most fun.
Yeah, it's basically a lot of people do play video games,
I
and
think I saw
it
a
just
stat that was like 93% in the US play video games.
like 92% of
Under,
everyone, like the whole
no, it was like
population.
young adults and kids. It was really high. And then if you factor in like mobile phones, if you're playing a game on that, that's still a video game. So
Really?
maybe that number
Yeah,
goes higher, right? So
yeah. Because I don't play actual gaming console related games anymore because I don't have one. I just play on my phone.
that's a video
But
game. Exactly. And so can we take that video game and teach a lesson on GameClass? I think we could.
yeah,
So, and that just goes right into like, would it be fun? Would you be engaged? And how would it affect your learning or your teaching?
what is it like? What is it like for a, person to learn utilizing GameClass?
What is it going to be like?
Like, what is it like? Let's say, for example, I'm just trying. Do you pick a particular topic that you want to learn, or do you just play a game and then while in the middle of the game, a piece of information pops up or something like that?
I think honestly, it's just there's unlimited possibilities. So, I mean, look, we can take any game. We can take Super Mario, we can take Tetris, we can take Pong, or we can take a game that comes out a week from now, right? And we can
Yeah,
start playing with it going, wow, wait, I could teach a lesson on this. Whether it's a 5 minute lesson, a 30-second lesson, something for, kindergartners or something that's more advanced. I mean, look, I could teach entrepreneurship using Legend of Zelda. I
right.
could. You'd be surprised. I don't think there's really a limit on what you could do. What excites me is we're a visual platform, right? We're video engagement. So if someone comes out and creates something amazing, it's going to get shared, and it may blow people's minds.
In a way, because I could say that one of my mentors once said that we live in a highly visual society. And I believe with the visual cues that you're creating, that's how you, in a way, you just try to engage yourself with the game and you just learn a lot in terms of what's going on, why you're doing this, and how you're going to resolve an issue going forward.
Exactly. And so, it can be stuff that's very like subject based, like counting math, stats, or it could just be like general, like outside the box thinking, right? You ever watch them play video games and they do something that no one else did, but it worked better? They still had to think through that process, right? And you can go,
Yeah,
why did they make the decision they made? And look how much time they saved, or look how they made it to the end goal. So I think it's really exciting. It doesn't just have to be like to the bone subject based. It can just be like, why did they do what they did? What was the
right.
thinking there?
In a way, but so why is it that you really want to make this impact, this major change on people? Like, okay, let's say there's always this concern that people could be addicted to video games. As you mentioned, the stats, like
Oh yeah.
93% of the world of the US, of young people in the US play video games. And then that's causing addiction. And then people are out there in the real world are saying, I just can't stand the fact that, my kid is addicted to playing video games.
Think it's more than fair to say it. I don't think I could argue that that's not a concern of mine. And I wouldn't want my kid, addicted to video games. But I think we have to be realistic and be like, yeah, kids are going to play video games. It's not going to go away. Like every year on year, the growth of video game playing goes up. And that's not going to go away, in my opinion. So can we turn that into something more productive? I think we can. So I think if I'm a parent, knowing that my kid's playing video games, if they have the way where they can learn more when they're playing, or enter contests and make them be more creative, I'm probably a happier parent. Same thing if I'm a teacher. So I don't want to be like, no, that's not true. I mean, it is true and it is a concern, but can we use that to our advantage to make it something better, something more?
Do you think if GameClass could be a way for teachers or even people in school or even homeschoolers just finding ways to have their kids get educated in certain things?
Yes, I do. And we have an option where we have quizzes on there, and we have a thing where it's like free response. Sometimes you just want to know what the kid is thinking or what the adult is thinking, right? Mm-hmm. So if you put on a quiz there and you have free response and they feel more freedom to be like, this is what I'm thinking right now, you get exactly what's in their head that maybe you wouldn't have gone that if you weren't using a video game. So that excites me. So I think, even having, people where, they get to create. So having like a young kid create, they might learn way more than if they're just watching. So I think there's a lot of ways you can use GameClass to really, help educate people.
Right. Makes sense. And what is the overall goal right now? How many people are utilizing your platform?
We haven't launched, so the answer would be zero, right? We're going to launch our beta here soon, and I'm excited to see how it goes. Things don't just always go great. I know that through my experience. Like, it's not going to launch it and there's going to be all these users, and we have to figure things out. Maybe there's things that I'm missing that I need to add, or maybe there's things I had that people aren't interested in using.
Like, what is the hype like right now? Like, what are people thinking right now? Let's say once you launch GameClass, are they going to be like, okay, I think I'm going to use this and see if I want to have, let's say, even would this be feasible for kids just to say I want to just download GameClass, play games, and then learn something out of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, this wouldn't work if it was too complicated. So again, it's a cloud-based editor, meaning you don't have to download it. Any internet connection, you can go up and start editing. And how do you, get video games on there? Well, again, we give you the ability to record right off our platform with one button click. That's easy. Two, most video game systems today, they have a one-click recording. So it's really easy to take that recording and upload it. So I think this wouldn't have worked 5 years ago. So the timing is everything with any business and anything in life. You got to time it right. Give you a quick example, like Dreamcast, Sega was one of the first companies that let you play online, which everyone does these days, but they bombed. They bombed because they were too early. The internet wasn't there yet. They missed it by like 3 years. So timing is so important, right? And I think my timing is really, really good for this to work.
I mean, there's one reason.
That question, right? Because I don't want to miss on that. Like when I was doing the Glossade cryo, when I was doing cryo, the feedback was all over the place. Like, are you crazy? What are you doing? You're nuts. Go be a physical therapist. This is crazy. For GameClass, it's actually been the opposite. Everyone's like, wow, that's so cool, so genius. But then again, it doesn't matter if they think it's a great idea. Can it be a business, right? Right. So then I went to teachers and said, hey, would you use this? And I was kind of afraid they're going to be like, no, I don't want them playing video games. But what they've been telling me so far is all my students are playing video games. I love that I can take this and turn it so it's educational for them. And they'll probably be really excited if I use a clip, once a week. So my general feedback from teachers so far has been phenomenal.
So why is it that nobody has come up with this idea? I mean, now, like, I'm just wondering, because there's so many games out there that educates the kids, but
there you go. They did it the wrong way, in my opinion. This is my opinion, right? We've seen many video games designed from the ground up to educate. But the problem is they're not games that kids are excited about or that we like playing.
It's just it's like Solve 2 plus 2.
That's what I mean. And they're like, no, they're like, you're tricking me. I'm not trying to trick anyone here. Like, let's take Fortnite, which all these kids are playing, and teach them using a game they already enjoy, right? Let's stop trying to create something when we already know what games are popular. So that's why I think this is so exciting because it's doing something that I think people thought was smart, but it wasn't working the way they thought it would. And I'm not saying there's not, those game companies out there that are doing well, making video games that are educational. I think my idea is just taking it somewhere where more people will want to do it because they're like, I already like this game. Let me learn through this thing.
So what? Okay, so let's just say this game class. You just aggregate all these different games into the platform, and then utilize what is. I'm still trying to understand the picture of what game class is in terms of the benefit for the video game player. Like, okay, they're gonna learn some. Like, I don't know. I mean, because you play video games, you learn something, right? But actual video games, but how are you really learning when you're utilizing game class?
So one, we're not going to charge you to learn. At this point, it's free. You go on there, you can watch videos, whether you're watching with your parent created for you, you're watching it, or you're just like, oh, cool. Like you're just watching gameplay clips or educational type lessons. That's free. We charge you to create, meaning that if you're having fun, you're creating and you want to do more and you want to save these lessons that you like forever, you pay to get more minutes. So that's kind of where, this becomes a financial model.
And where does it go? Where is this going to go in the next couple of years?
Who knows, right? We got to launch it to see. But where would I like to see it go? I'd like to see that in a lot of schools and a lot of teachers like to see it as a big part of homeschooling. And I'd like to see a lot of parents using it. I think it could be a really special bonding thing. I have a daughter and, she's 6 months, but maybe in 3 years, I can put my face on a video game and start just teaching her stuff.
I
And
didn't know
maybe,
you were. I was just saying. I didn't know you were a father. You look very like college student kind
yeah,
of.
well, I think I'm still somewhat young. I think
Yeah.
I want to believe, but yeah, I'm a new dad, and I was actually really excited about using game class to teach her because I want to teach my daughter stuff, and I thought this could be a fun way to do some teaching and maybe put my face on there and teach her some basic number counting and stuff like that. And then as far as the future, I would like to see game companies get behind this. That video games aren't just nonsense, for boredom or entertainment, but that they can really teach it maybe better than any other thing in the world. So if game companies were able to launch contests where they say, hey, create a short lesson, we're going to give away a free console, a free controller, a free video game, maybe all of a sudden gamers are like, hey, what a great way to take my game clips and turn it into currency, turn it into, game supplies, game controllers, video games.
Yeah, because I believe there's a lot of video game companies out there that are trying to get into the educational space, but yours is more like you're trying to distinguish through video capture in a way, right?
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to do is open up a lot of possibilities here, a lot. Because I think just, everyone probably, even if they don't like video games, like, oh, Oregon Trail, that was fun back in the day, right? Or they're like, there's some game that like, yeah, I at least appreciate that video game. So imagine being able to take something that they enjoy and coming up with 50 different lessons you can teach with it. I think it could really change things.
So one thing about video games, like as I mentioned, video games in general, you have a lot of concern from a lot of people saying like, I'm not able to. Let's say, for example, if you're trying to trying to get physical, like trying to be, trying to exercise, trying to learn the importance of exercise. Do you think game class would be able to provide that kind of things? Like, okay, I'll play a game, but then
I like this question because like you're gonna learn a sport by playing it better than
yeah,
probably watching it. But
yeah,
you would be surprised about the professional sports teams that watch videos and that what they learn watching clips, right? So
yeah.
could you use Madden and simulate different scenarios and have your players watch these scenarios play out and have them learn? Yeah, you bet. Maybe all of a sudden, or would it be fun to watch Tom Brady play Madden and as he's playing the video game, he's teaching you what he's actually thinking during the situation? Yeah, I think that'd be a pretty cool way to learn about sport. So I think there's a lot of ways you can take it, but I don't imagine game class being something where it's an entire class, if that makes sense. You don't go into
It,
a school and they have a game class where it's the entire day is game class. No, I think it's like every classroom maybe gets, 30 minutes a week or 10 minutes a day, depending on how it's working.
so is the product you're building? It could be customizable for an individual and also for a group, right?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Video games they're variables, right? So if you watch a TV show or a movie, it never
Yeah,
changes what happens. Never. When you
yeah.
have a video game, there's endless possibilities because you control the video game. That means you control endless amounts of teaching possibilities. Like I took a film class in college. We watched films. I loved it because I love movies. I thought I learned a lot. I was really engaged. But I think game class offers a lot more potential because of the variables. You can change everything, whereas the
You
movie was
can,
never going to be different.
yeah, you can also create your own game in a way, right?
Absolutely, you can create a game within a game. So that's what's kind of cool is we have this thing called game class challenges, and what it is there's different categories related to learning, and it's basically a ranking system where other people can rank you on how well you did it. So take any game, you do it a certain way, you ask them to rate you. Maybe someone else says, I can do that better. They come up with a more clever way to do it, you rate them. So now it becomes this friendly competition of who's more creative using that same game, a game within a game.
Like in the coming years or so, do you think there's going to be more about the AI? There's going to be more implementation of AI. Let's say you want to automate certain like aspects of the game or something like that. You
Yeah,
can
I think
list,
that, like chat G, like all this stuff coming out, right? Like it's going to change
or
everything.
or even you could recreate the metaverse where you could just be into that world and just learn everything you need to learn, right?
You could, and I think, look, game class, if VR becomes a big thing, there's going to be VR lessons in there. So game class is going to have to adapt to what's happening in the world and what's happening with video games.
So let's say if you were to go, okay, I'm just trying to ask some scenario based questions in terms
Yeah.
of how the game works. Let's say I'm trying to learn how plants grow, right? How give me one way on how what type of game or what and one way how that game will be able to help me learn how plants grow.
Okay. So there's a game called what's it called? Animal Crossing.
Hmm.
Okay, extremely popular video game, sold like 30 million copies on Nintendo Switch. There's 120 million Nintendo Switches out there, tons, right? So people love this game. In this game, you plant things. You have to water it, you have to nurture it to grow the thing. Well, you can show that in the video game about how you take care of a plant to a young kid, and maybe you're teaching them already, like, you got to take care of the stuff that you plant. I was a garden teacher for a little bit. So if I could have used this as a garden teacher to show a 10-minute or 5-minute clip of like how you take care of your plants, how you trim them, how you water them and make sure they're taken care of, the sunlight they need, things like that. That's just one example, but that's just off the top, right? You call me out. Like, I mean, how many games could you maybe do that with plants? Probably a lot of games.
Right, right. Anyway, so I think we're running out of time. So one last question I want to ask is, in the coming years with game with a lot of what I call the virtual reality aspect of education coming forward, like where do you see game class going with this?
I think Game Class could grow with it really well. I mean, I just bought my first VR headset and I was blown away. I think it has a long way to go. It kind of reminds me of when I got a Nintendo 64 as a kid and the graphics where they were, and now where the graphics are today with an Xbox Series X. I think there's like 20 years to go till the graphics are where they need to be, but it does trick your brain into thinking you're there, which is incredible. So there's certain things like maybe you perform surgery, right? If you're a surgeon, you practice this thing, someone's teaching you on game class how to do a surgery or how to fly, how to fly a plane, you name it. But the VR, I think, could be a huge part of game class.
Sounds good. All right, cool, Scholar. Thank you so much for coming on the Next in Time podcast. And yeah, let's see how game class really changes the educational space.
Thanks, SD. Appreciate it.